Okay, so this is a recording for the Ocean Density Lab. So depending on when you're doing it, if it's before the due date passes, you'll be able to access it from the class plan on the homepage. But just in case you do it afterwards, click on Plan, and then scroll down to the 30th. All right, so we've got 2627. That's the laboratory we're going to be working on for a little bit. You can click on any of these. Start from 2.06, click More, and then this brings you to a couple of things. So you'll want to start with the lesson introduction. In here, there's just some basics as far as some terms we're going to use, things like that. But the key thing you want to make sure you grab is the student guide. Right, this is going to have your materials. It's also going to have the procedure, okay, which includes preparing colored tap water ice cubes. Okay, so you will need at least a day to let the ice freeze. Then I'm going to go back to the class and continue through the rest of the unit. It's going to take you through some content related to ocean water density, to define those terms that were in there, and continue all the way through there until you eventually get to the Dropbox area. Now I'm just going to get myself there a little bit faster. In the Dropbox area is going to be your lab report. You want these, you want the student guide and the lab report before you start. So the lab report is going to have some places for you to make a hypothesis, okay? So what you're going to be doing based on your procedure is you're going to take ice cubes and let them melt on top of 3 different solutions. One that's fresh water, so it's just plain tap water out of the sink. One that's salty water. Then one that's saturated water, which means there's so much salt in there that some of it can't dissolve. Okay? And you're going to let the ice melt on top of those sets of water, and you're going to observe what happens, including what you can see with your eyes. You're also going to be feeling for temperature changes. Okay? So that's the basic procedure. Just look over what you need to fill out as you're going. Particularly on the second page, you're going to be making observations at 0 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and 30 minutes. Okay? So you're going to, it does suggest possibly doing these separately. That depends on how good you are at multitasking. All right? But for the sake of making this video not incredibly long, I will be doing all of mine together, but I also am recording it so I can, aside from feeling, I can at least make visual observations later from the recording. All right, so what you're going to need. In your kit, there should be these little plastic containers. There should be 3 of them. You can use those. I'm actually going to be using some glasses from my house because I made ice cubes that are too big. You'll probably want a spoon of some sort, a timer. So I'm using my cell phone. The colored ice cubes, and I can get this under here, salt. Okay, so I'm going to switch these out for my glasses. I labeled on my board, F stands for fresh, S stands for salt, super stands for super salt or super saturated. And then I have hot water. I got all of this water at the same time, so it should be relatively the same temperature to start with. I have not added any salt yet, so I'm going to do that now. So for my salty, I'm just going to add a spoonful of salt to that one. And then stir it in. Make sure it all dissolves. Yep. You can tell it's cloudy, but I don't see any salt granules, so I should be okay. And then for the super saturated, I'm going to start with 3 of these and see if that gets me to being saturated. And I'm going to keep going until I can't stir all the salt in. Some of it stays down at the bottom. And I think I made it. It is definitely much cloudier, and I can still see salt on the bottom of my glass. Okay. So there's my salt setup. Now I'm going to take my ice cubes. I made, don't know how well you'll be able to see these, but green pumpkin ice cubes that are too big for those little containers that came with the kit, so that's why I'm using my glasses. And I'm going to put one into each glass and just let it float on top. All right, so this is the point. Once you get it all set, this is when you want to start by filling out and taking your initial observations at the 0 minutes. Okay, before you started this, you did want to have your predictions done, but right now, feeling all of my glasses, down at the bottom definitely feels warm. The top of the very, very edge where the ice is, I can feel a little bit of coolness, but that's all I got right now. I'm going to start my timer so that I repeat this again at 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and 30 minutes. So while I'm waiting for 5 minutes, let's just continue looking over the sheet for a second, and then I'll let you do 10 and 30 on your own. So for this table, big thing is a visual description in the top row, and then temperature at the top of the glass, temperature at the bottom of the glass. So for me, I would say, as far as a visual goes, the ice is floating on top. And then honestly, for all three of them at the beginning, this is the same. Floating on top. Temperature of that very top ring is cold. And bottom is hot. And that would be the same for all of these to start out. I'm just going to copy and paste that down. Okay. So down here, this is a summary of our data. So this is something we can do when we're done, along with answering question 4. All right. This page should have already been done because it was hypothesis. I didn't do it for you because I want you to think for yourself. So got another couple minutes still to go until 5. But just initially looking at things, my fresh water has already melted. But the salt water is not. That's an interesting observation. I'm going to try scooching these so that you can see maybe these guys a little bit better. Okay. Also already noticing that the saturated salt water has the most amount of ice left, which is a little bit hard to see just because of the quality of my video here, but I almost still have the full shape of the pumpkin in my salt water, and I would say the pumpkin's about 1/3 the size in the, I almost had the full pumpkin in the saturated salt water, and then about 1/3 of a pumpkin left in the just plain salt water. Now, one thing that is different that you may want to do differently in yours, I used very hot water for this, which is going to lead to melting faster. I'm still getting a clear, distinct difference between the 3 types of water, but I may end up running into, at 30 minutes, not necessarily having much change between 10 and 30. So if you start with maybe just warm tap water, I had warm water out of one of those water dispenser things, so it comes out. hot enough to make tea. So this last question down here is a very, very good question. Okay, so think about which of these waters. So the first thing you got to do is think about which of these waters seawater would be most like. Okay, then once you've decided which of the three sets of water, look at your data and think about it. Answer first about the temperature. Do you think sea surface temperatures are warmer or cooler due to the melting iceberg on top? All right. And then, expand it. Sit there and talk about how does what we see here relate to why icebergs are in saltwater and not in freshwater, things like that. All right, we are just about there at our 5-minute mark. So, and again, mine's going really fast because I used very hot water, but feeling my fresh water, it's completely melted. I'm actually going to show you, I'm trying to show you is sound here. You can see the fresh water is entirely green throughout, whereas the salt water, sorry, my cats are getting dinner. The salt water, both of them, are forming a green layer on top. Sorry about that. Give me a second. Okay. Okay, so just some observations that I would make now, and I need to do my last thing, temperature check. So along the freshwater, top to bottom, it all feels like the same temperature, which makes sense because it all has the same color. If I feel my two saltwater cups, the bottom is definitely cooler than it was, but that top ring where it's green is still colder, but not as cold as initial because the ice is melting. And then same thing with my supersaturated. Temperature-wise, again, almost everything's the same except for that green ring at the top that is slightly cooler than the rest. Okay, so these are the types of observations I hope you are going to make while you do this. So more detail is always better. That's going to make it easier for you to answer questions. And when you do it, you'll continue to 10 minutes and 30 minutes. See if anything changes or if everything eventually mixes together. Okay?